Hello everybody, welcome to What Culture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Josh.
Hello, Scott.
Josh Pham, I don't know how much you're looking forward to the idea of playing older games on your brand new fancy pants PS5, but we've had a bit of a breakthrough, if it's true, on a Turkish website, Hepsi Barada. Now, they apparently are the Turkish Amazon in terms of how big they are and how reputable they are, and they've just recently posted their big page for the PS5. You can pre-order it and everything else, and inside there is some details on the system itself, which mentions full backwards compatibility with all PS2 games and all PS3 games, and a unique design that connects old with the new. Now, since they posted that, obviously Reddit and a few other people on social media jumped on it, and they've removed that text from the posting, which is usually the smoking gun. And it probably will be. So I guess that's the main thing. Either this is the complete truth and this is the way we're going, or this gets everybody to stop mentioning Hepsi Barada in countries that hadn't even heard of it, like us.
Yeah. It's. I don't know whether it's the smoking gun or what, because usually when information gets taken down by an official partner, it feels like that. It feels like it's legit information that they've released too early. But when it comes to this, I feel like we're going through like 4 different hoops of kind of obfuscation from the actual text. We've got the initial translation, we've got the edit, we've got a bunch of other interpretations on Reddit by people who actually speak the language. So it is up in the air, but it would make sense with what we've heard over the past few months in regards to Sony's plans for backwards compatibility in matching Microsoft in terms of making the PS5 something of a legacy console by including PS2 and PS3 games. So it does line up, and it does make me think that, they might have just jumped the gun on kind of this description and put it out before we get Thursday's reveal, where I assume they will have to speak about backwards compatibility in some capacity.
Yeah, because I saw Sony's Jim Ryan was out there saying look, we're going to showcase PS5 games. We want to lead with stuff that you can only play on PS5. But I kind of hope that they just on the side go hey, we've got this technology as well. Obviously they've got the Tempest engine for the 3D stuff, 3D audio stuff. They've got all this stuff with the 100 times faster loading, all the SSD, and just slide in alongside. Oh, by the way, you can go play Simpsons Hit and Run if you want to, or whatever they've got on the side. I just want something that just sort of ticks that box. I think it's too obvious an open goal to not do. Obviously, one of the biggest elephants in the room with this quote is that there's no mention of PS1, which I guess is mainly because of the discs that the PS1 used, that it's not as easy to emulate or something as the PS2 and the PS3 games. I don't know, but I guess, do you think that would be a missed opportunity if they did PS2 and 3 and you couldn't just throw one of the most iconic systems of all time in there as well?
Yeah, 100%, especially because, we have seen a lack of support for PS1 games on the PlayStation 4. We've got a select few PS2 games that have been, not remastered, but updated a little bit. They've added trophy support, they've re-released them in some capacity, but we haven't seen that extended to the PS1 as of yet, which, like you say, is kind of like a huge miss, because so many people have so much nostalgia for those titles, and a lot of them still hold up to this day. All we've got to kind of replace our love for PlayStation 1 is the PlayStation Classic that released a few years ago. And as someone who bought that for full price at launch, I can tell you it's not exactly the most ideal way to play those games. So as we've been saying on kind of like these podcasts, these news videos for a while, it is an open goal to kind of bring back that library, but there is a lot of work that goes into that. Ben Roy made a great point on the podcast we kind of did on what we expect from Sony's PS5 reveal this week, where he said, this is a company that took 10 years to figure out how to let you change your name on PSN. So if they can't figure out that right, getting all of these older games, a lot of them which were built on markedly different architecture, is going to be difficult. It's no small feat. And Microsoft managed to do it because they put all hands on deck with getting backwards compatibility for the Xbox One. But I do think it's a shame that we don't have PS1, but there is a lot of great games on PlayStation 2 that people either have fondness for or missed out completely. And of course, PlayStation 3 games coming over is a huge win as well, because a lot of people might not have owned that machine and have only played the best games via remasters like The Last of Us Remastered or the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection.
The thing with The thing with all the backwards compatibility stuff, they seem to always do a run at the start of each generation where they go, oh look, if you get the system now, it'll play the previous generation stuff, like with the PS2 and the whole Emotion Engine thing. I think the vast majority of PS2s played PS1 games, but the PS3, when that launched, there was only specific SKUs for that in the first couple of years, or maybe not even that long on launch, that played PS2 stuff, and then they just went full whole hog PS3 games. Obviously the PS4 wasn't backwards compatible at all, but I wonder whether this is like a limited run thing where it's like this one can do, you know, they'll test the waters and see if a mass market or a mass, you know, set of consumers actually respond to this stuff, and then roll something out from there. Like I would buy like an optional legacy version of the PS5 to play everything, but it is always that conversation of like, you know, brass tacks facts. How many people are actually going to go back and play those old games? You know, I just like, is there that much like appeal in the marketplace? It's just, I don't know. It's one of those things that like I think. I would value that massively, but like, are they going to get a massive return in sales, or is it just this big optics thing? It just looks cool or sounds cool to be like, oh look, all of PlayStation is available here. I don't know if you've gone back to old stuff and realized that actually the checkpointing is really bad and the save systems are really bad, and like actually the idea that I had in my head is better than the version that, you know, actually was there.
Oh, 100% all the time. When I picture old games, I more or less picture them remastered. Like I do the remastering in my head, and that's how they look. But I do think, yeah, you make a good point. We mentioned this when we talked about the Xbox announcing the backwards compatibility thing and how they're going to implement HDR and stuff in the older games. That when it comes to Sony, they've never really been a huge fan of it. Like you said, they actually took backwards compatibility out of PlayStation 3s after a few years when they launched like the slimline model and stuff like that. So for them, I very much do think it's kind of an optics thing, because it's an easy thing to market. You know, at the moment, this is something that Sony doesn't have that the competition does. So at the very least, they're going to want to get some form of it in there just so that Microsoft doesn't have that extra tick on the back of the box. You know, I think it is more of an optics thing, which might mean that it's not as, you know, expertly implemented as Microsoft is planning on it to be in the future. But I think they've got to have it in some form. And it's interesting, like how Sony, because you mentioned that Jim Ryan interview, I think that was very telling. You know, he was talking to, I think it was Games Industry Biz, and he was saying about how Sony as a company believes in generations. They're going to make PlayStation 5 games exclusive to PlayStation 5 in the first few years, which is the exact opposite of what Microsoft is doing. They said that, you know, Xbox games aren't going to be exclusive to the platform, at least initially. They're going to try and make the transition from this generation to the next as smooth as possible. So this is a company that very much believes in kind of these systems as their own individual things. We start to see those barriers break down a little bit, but not quite to the same extent as the competition.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most important things to address, because you obviously have a legacy and the PlayStation branding is so strong. That's the weird irony with like Microsoft putting so much stock in like, hey, you can put an original Xbox game in the Series X and it'll automatically get a 4K resolution, HDR support, and like, you know, different things like that. There was something, I forget, the quick resume function, you know, that gets added as well. They're putting so much stock into this like Xbox legacy, which like, I'm not denying it has a legacy, but it's nothing compared to PlayStation. And you would think that Sony would lead with that stuff. But it's just strange. Like I totally believe in champion different generations of tech too. We need new IPs and new games and stuff, but you kind of just want it to be on the side, just sort of like, you know, if you get a taste for, in my case, Soul Reaver 2, and I want to go pick it up, I should be able to go do that. And it's like, I want to be able to do that without having to also go buy another PS2 just to play something, to sort of scratch the nostalgic itch. Like being able to just pick up anything and put it in the PS5 would be awesome. There is another quote from PlayStation Iceland. Their blog updated. It's since been removed, which again, nearly always proves stuff. But PlayStation Iceland put up a quote saying that the PS5 will play a back catalogue of supported PS4 games with a system update. That's been removed. So that kind of makes me think that it's a select number of things that are, because I guess there's going to be publisher approval with this stuff, and the way that Microsoft have been doing it is going publisher to publisher and getting people to sign on. Because obviously, you know, it's going to depend on whether or not that publisher wants to let their game quote unquote go for free, or whether they would rather sell you a remaster further down the line.
Yeah, I mean, even with when Microsoft first announced that backwards compatibility was coming, it was only a select few titles at launch. I mean, there was a considerable amount, but it wasn't like overnight that the entire Xbox library was on there. Even now, there are some major games that haven't shown up either on Games Pass or backwards compatibility. So it's a process, and I think even with the PlayStation 4 games, like you mentioned, Mark Cerny and the execs of Sony have talked up the idea that a lot of PlayStation 4 games will be playable on PlayStation 5 at launch, but even that's not everything. So if they can't even get, you know, guarantee everything on the PlayStation 4 to cross over, I don't think they can also guarantee that for past generations as well, where the licensing deals and, you know, deals with publishers is going to be even trickier and kind of more difficult to figure out. So when it comes to this stuff, the idea of being able to say, you know, PlayStation 2 games, PlayStation 3 games, PlayStation 4 games are coming to PlayStation 5, that's such a huge marketing thing to have, a huge marketing kind of key term, but in reality that's probably going to be, you know, a small amount at first that grows over time, which I'm fine with. I think that's like an okay way to go, and it makes a lot of sense, but I'm cautious about overselling it as this kind of legacy console that suddenly gives you access to all of Sony's games.
And I've long said that Sony are a very reactive company. Like, you know, they implement trophies after achievements. They go with VR after the Oculus is taken off. It would be the most Sony move to literally just do this the way that Microsoft have been doing it, and have a select pool of titles that gets updated each month that are available digitally. But if you happen to get the disc, you can just throw that in as well. At least that's what's working on Microsoft's side. I guess as a final thing, what game would you go back to? Say you're open to the entire PS2, PS3 library. Do you have one thing that you would go back to that hasn't been made available yet?
Well, because we're only getting, I've got a couple, okay? Because we're not getting Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 or 4 in the upcoming remastered bundle, and have to go back to those and Tony Hawk's Underground. But if I had carte blanche for anything across PlayStation's entire library, I'd go back and I'd play Star Wars Jedi Power Battles on the PlayStation 1. I'd give it online connectivity, and I'd play that I'd play that with you, I'd play it with Benroy, whoever fancied it.
God. If the thing is, like, that's one of the big, like I said before about save systems and checkpointing, you don't realize how badly they age. If they had some way of, like Microsoft's doing the quick resume thing, which kind of, you know, makeshift gives you a checkpoint option in games that maybe didn't have them before, that Sony would need something like that too. But oh my god, Jedi Power Battles in crisp HD would just be brilliant. Playing as Plo Koon, I would totally take that. My shout would be Simpsons Hit and Run, or just or Blood Omen 2. It's just Legacy of Kain, basically. Just give me access to Legacy of Kain. If Crystal Dynamics not going to do an HD collection, then, you know, we'll make one happen ourselves. So something like that. But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below. Do you think that Sony will actually turn heads by leading with backwards compatibility as part of the PS5 reveal? And what kind of games would you want to see on there from PS2, PS3, or maybe even PS1? For now, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com.
I've been Josh from WhatCulture.com.
I will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.